In a bustling city where the sounds of sirens mixed with the chatter of people going about their daily lives, two police officers had lost their way. They started their careers filled with hope, wanting to make a difference and keep the streets safe. But as time went on, the weight of their jobs began to take a toll on them. The pressures of dealing with crime every day and seeing the worst of humanity led them down a darker path. These two officers, once seen as heroes, found themselves tangled in a web of corruption. They began to think of ways to make easy money, and soon they were accepting bribes from local gangs. They convinced themselves that it was just a little money on the side, a reward for their hard work. Instead of standing up for the law, they turned their backs on it. They would ignore crimes if they were paid enough, letting criminals go free while lining their own pockets. At first, it seemed harmless. They thought nobody would notice their small betrayals. They became confident in their power, believing they were above the law. The thrill of getting away with their actions fueled their greed. Every time they accepted a bribe or looked the other way, they felt a rush. But with each decision, they drifted further away from the noble reasons they had joined the police force in the first place. As the days turned into months, the effects of their choices rippled through the community. Crime rates started to rise, and innocent people began to feel unsafe. Local businesses suffered as customers feared for their safety. Neighborhoods that were once lively and full of hope now lived in fear of the very people sworn to protect them. The citizens grew frustrated, feeling abandoned by the police they once trusted. They began to whisper among themselves, sharing stories of the corrupt officers and how they were failing their duty. While the two officers reveled in their newfound lifestyle, there was someone watching from the sidelines. A young officer, fresh out of the academy, had joined the police force with dreams of making a positive impact. She was eager to serve her community and believed in the law's power to bring about change. But as she observed the corrupt practices of her fellow officers, she felt a sinking feeling in her stomach. How could they betray the badge they wore? At first, she was hesitant to act. She worried about what speaking up might cost her. But as she witnessed the harm being done to the community, her resolve grew stronger. She began to document everything she saw, the bribes exchanged in dark alleys, the drug deals happening right under the officers' noses, and the faces of those who suffered because of their actions. Each piece of evidence weighed heavily on her heart, but she knew it was necessary to bring the truth to light. The city buzzed with tension. Citizens were demanding change, and whispers of a potential investigation began to circulate. The young officer, fueled by a sense of justice, realized she could not remain silent any longer. She knew that if nothing was done, the corruption would only continue to fester and grow. Determined to make a difference, she took a deep breath and decided to reach out to someone she could trust, hoping her actions could spark a change and put an end to the wrongdoings of her fellow officers. As the clock ticked on, the stage was set for a confrontation between good and evil, justice and corruption. The consequences of the officers' choices were about to catch up with them in a way they never expected. The young officer's courage would soon challenge the very foundation of the corrupt practices that had taken root within the police force. Little did they know that their days of evading justice were numbered. As the tension in the city continued to build, the young officer knew she had to act quickly. She decided to reach out to the Internal Affairs Division, a special group within the police department responsible for investigating misconduct. She had heard stories about their work, how they held officers accountable for their actions. It felt like a risky move, but she believed it was the right thing to do. Gathering her evidence was not easy. She spent late nights compiling notes, photos, and recordings, making sure everything was organized and clear. Each time she reviewed her findings, her heart raced with a mix of fear and determination. She worried about what would happen to her career and safety if the corrupt officers found out she was speaking out against them. But she also knew that the people in her community needed someone to stand up for them. They were suffering, and the thought of being a part of that change gave her strength. After several days of hard work, she finally gathered enough evidence to present her case to Internal Affairs. The meeting felt monumental, and as she walked into the office, her hands trembled slightly. The investigator she met, a seasoned officer with a reputation for integrity, listened attentively as she explained everything she had witnessed. She showed him the recordings and documents, detailing each corrupt act she had seen. The investigator took notes and asked questions, showing genuine concern for the community's safety. He promised to look into her claims and assured her that her bravery would not go unnoticed. With a sense of relief washing over her, she realized she had taken the first step toward justice. Meanwhile, the two corrupt officers, unaware of the storm brewing around them, continued their shady dealings. They felt invincible, believing they had everyone fooled. They went about their routines, making deals and accepting money, completely dismissing the fact that someone might be watching them. They had become so comfortable in their corruption that they didn't think twice about the risks. However, as the days passed, the investigator began his work. He gathered a team and started a thorough investigation. They interviewed citizens who had complained about the officers, collecting testimonies that painted a vivid picture of the growing unrest in the community. The investigator was determined to expose the truth and put a stop to the corrupt practices that had taken root in the department. As the investigation progressed, the tension among the officers began to rise. The corrupt officers noticed some changes within the precinct, whispers among their colleagues, new faces in meetings, and a strange sense of unease. They could sense that something was not quite right, but they couldn't pinpoint what it was. One evening, they gathered at their usual bar after a long day on the job. As they sat at the bar, laughing and sharing stories, they couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. They exchanged nervous glances, but brushed it off, convincing themselves that it was just paranoia. They continued their conversations, their laughter echoing in the dimly lit room, unaware that their days of deception were numbered. Back at the precinct, the investigators' team worked tirelessly to build their case. They set up a sting operation, planning to catch the corrupt officers in the act. They were going to create a scenario that would draw them out, an opportunity for them to engage in their illegal activities once again. The plan was risky, but the investigator felt confident that they had enough evidence to make it a success. The young officer, now a key player in the investigation, felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. She was about to help take down the very officers she had looked up to when she first joined the force. The thought of facing them was daunting, but her commitment to justice kept her focused. She knew that this was her chance to help her community, and she was ready to see it through. As the date of the operation approached, everyone involved felt a mix of anticipation and fear. They knew the risks, but also understood the importance of their mission. This was more than just an operation. It was about restoring trust in the police force and bringing integrity back to the community. The stage was set, and the showdown between good and evil was about to begin, with the potential to change everything. As the day of the operation approached, excitement and nerves filled the air. The young officer could hardly sleep at night, her mind racing with thoughts of what was to come. She had never been involved in something this intense before, and she wanted to make sure everything went perfectly. The pressure was on, but she reminded herself why she was doing this: to protect her community and to stand up against corruption. The investigator gathered everyone involved for a final briefing. In a small, dimly lit room at the precinct, the team sat around a table, their faces a mix of seriousness and determination. The investigator went over the plan once more, making sure that everyone understood their roles. They would set up a fake drug deal that would lure the corrupt officers into a trap. The plan was simple yet risky, but everyone knew that it was necessary to catch the two officers in the act. The young officer felt a rush of adrenaline as she listened. She would be playing a crucial role in this operation. Her job would be to pose as a dealer, making the officers believe that they were about to make a big score. She practiced her lines in her head, trying to stay calm. The weight of the mission pressed down on her shoulders, but she was ready to face whatever came next. Finally, the day arrived. The sun began to set, casting a golden hue across the city as everyone prepared for the operation. The atmosphere was electric, and the tension was palpable. The team members put on their undercover clothes, blending in with the surroundings. They were ready to catch the officers red-handed. The meeting place was set in a quiet alleyway, away from prying eyes. As the young officer stood there, waiting for the corrupt officers to arrive, she felt a mix of fear and determination. This was it, the moment she had been preparing for. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that she was doing this for the people who had suffered because of the officers' actions. As time passed, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the alley. Her heart raced as she recognized the figures approaching. The corrupt officers, unaware of the trap, walked confidently toward her. They were laughing and joking, believing they were about to make an easy deal. The young officer forced a smile, trying to maintain her composure. "Hey there," one of the officers said, his voice casual as he approached. "I hear you've got something special for us." She played her part well, pretending to be relaxed and in control. "Yeah, I've got a stash that's going to make you very happy," she replied, keeping her voice steady. Inside, she was trembling, knowing that every word mattered. As they moved deeper into the alley, the team waited in silence, ready to pounce. The tension was thick in the air, and the young officer could feel her heart pounding in her chest. The moment was almost here. She exchanged a glance with the investigator, who was hiding just out of sight, signaling that they were ready. Just as the corrupt officers leaned in, excited about the deal, the signal was given. The investigator stepped out from the shadows, along with the rest of the team. "Police, you're under arrest," he shouted, and the alley erupted in chaos. The corrupt officers' faces turned from excitement to shock in an instant. They looked around, realizing they had been trapped. Panic set in as they tried to comprehend what was happening. The young officer watched as her fellow officers, who had once seemed so untouchable, were now handcuffed and brought down to their knees. It was a surreal moment, one she had only dreamed about. "Not so tough now, are you?" she thought to herself, a sense of satisfaction washing over her. It was a bittersweet victory. She felt proud of her role in bringing them to justice, but it was also a moment of reflection on how far they had fallen from their original purpose. As the team led the corrupt officers away, the young officer felt a mix of emotions. She had taken a stand, and now she could see the impact of her actions on the community. Her courage had helped restore some faith in the police force. She knew that this was just the beginning of a long journey toward healing, but she felt hopeful. The truth had come out, and it was a step toward a brighter future for everyone in the city. As the dust settled from the chaotic arrest, the young officer felt a rush of emotions. She had just witnessed a moment she had never thought possible. The officers who had once abused their power were now being taken away in handcuffs. A sense of accomplishment surged within her, but it was accompanied by the weight of what it meant for the community. She understood that this was a pivotal moment, not just for her career, but for everyone who had suffered under the corrupt practices of the two officers. In the days that followed, news of their arrest spread throughout the city. The media reported on the investigation, highlighting how internal efforts within the police department had finally brought accountability to those who had betrayed their oath. The community watched closely, and many felt a renewed sense of hope. People began to discuss the importance of integrity in law enforcement and the need for reforms to ensure that something like this wouldn't happen again. Meanwhile, the young officer found herself in the spotlight. Her bravery was recognized, and she was invited to speak at community meetings. Initially, she felt nervous about speaking in front of a crowd, but she quickly realized how important it was to share her story. She wanted to inspire others to speak up and stand against wrongdoing. At the meetings, she emphasized that everyone has a role to play in making their neighborhoods safer, and that they should never feel powerless against corruption. As she spoke, she saw the faces of the community members light up with interest and admiration. They were eager to ask questions and share their own experiences. Many expressed gratitude for her courage, and some even shared their own stories of feeling let down by the police. Hearing their words made her realize the true impact of her actions. She was not just fighting for justice. She was also giving a voice to those who felt ignored and powerless. The police department also began to reflect on its practices. After the investigation, a wave of reform initiatives were announced. The department held training sessions on ethics and integrity for all officers, emphasizing the importance of serving the community with respect. They encouraged open communication and created new channels for officers and citizens to report misconduct without fear of retaliation. The young officer felt a sense of pride, knowing that her actions had sparked this change. However, the journey was not without challenges. The corrupt officers, now facing serious charges, fought back. They hired powerful lawyers and tried to twist the narrative, painting themselves as victims of a conspiracy. They claimed that they were being unfairly targeted and that the young officer had ulterior motives. This made the young officer uneasy, and she worried about the backlash. She knew that standing up for what was right often came with a price. Despite the pressure, she remained steadfast. She leaned on her fellow officers and the community for support. They stood by her side, sharing stories of their own experiences with the corrupt officers, reinforcing that she was not alone in this fight. The investigator who had led the operation also became her ally, providing guidance and encouragement throughout the process. Together, they prepared for the court proceedings that would determine the fate of the corrupt officers. As the trial date approached, anticipation filled the air. The community was eager for justice and watched closely as the events unfolded. The young officer was ready to testify, prepared to share her account of what she had witnessed. She understood that her words could have a significant impact on the outcome of the trial. On the day of the trial, she walked into the courtroom, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. She took her seat on the witness stand, feeling the weight of everyone's expectations on her shoulders. But she reminded herself of why she was there. She was there for the community, for the people who had been wronged, and for the integrity of the police force. As she began to speak, her voice shook slightly, but she found her strength in the truth. She shared her story, describing the corruption and its effects on the community. She spoke about her journey from feeling powerless to standing up for what was right. Her words resonated in the courtroom, and she could see the impact they had on those listening. It was a moment of reckoning, not just for the corrupt officers, but for the entire community that had suffered in silence for too long. As the trial unfolded, the atmosphere in the courtroom was tense. The young officer sat on the witness stand, feeling the weight of her community's hopes resting on her shoulders. She could see familiar faces in the audience, people who had been affected by the corruption of the two officers. Their expressions showed a mix of anxiety and hope, and she felt determined to speak for them. The prosecutor began by asking her questions about her experiences with the corrupt officers. She recalled her first encounters with them, how she had looked up to them when she first joined the force. She described the gradual shift she had noticed as they became more involved in illegal activities. Every detail she shared painted a clear picture of the officers' wrongdoings. As she spoke, she could hear the murmurs of disbelief from the audience. Many were shocked to learn just how deep the corruption had run. The defense team, however, was quick to counter her testimony. They tried to discredit her, suggesting that she was simply trying to make a name for herself. They asked her about her motivations, implying that she had personal reasons for wanting to bring down the two officers. The young officer felt a surge of frustration at their tactics. She wasn't there for fame. She was there to seek justice for her community. Yet, she remained calm, reminding herself that the truth was on her side. As the trial continued, more witnesses were called to the stand. Community members shared their stories of how the officers' corruption had impacted their lives. Some spoke about the fear they felt when dealing with crime, knowing that the very people who should have protected them were turning a blind eye. Others described the deep disappointment they felt in the police force, which they had once trusted. Each testimony reinforced the young officer's belief that what she had done was right. With every witness, the defense struggled to maintain their narrative. They had initially thought they could intimidate everyone into silence, but the community was united. It was as if a dam had broken, and the truth was flooding out. The audience was captivated, and they began to rally behind the young officer, showing their support for those who had suffered in silence for too long. Finally, the day came for the young officer to take the stand again for her closing statement. She knew this was her moment to make a lasting impact. She looked around the room, seeing the faces of her fellow officers and the community members who had come to support her. Taking a deep breath, she spoke from the heart. "I joined the police force because I believed in justice and the good we could do for our community," she began. "But when I saw my fellow officers abusing their power, I realized that I had a choice. I could either stay silent and allow this to continue, or I could speak up and fight for what's right. I chose to fight." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "The people in this community deserve officers they can trust. They deserve protection and support, not betrayal. I had to take a stand not just for myself, but for everyone who has been let down. I hope you see that this isn't just about these two officers. It's about restoring faith in the police force and ensuring that we serve our community with honor." As she finished, she could feel the energy in the room shift. The audience was engaged, and she saw nods of agreement from many faces. She felt a surge of confidence. She had said what needed to be said. Now, it was in the hands of the jury. After several days of deliberation, the jury finally returned with their verdict. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as everyone awaited the decision. When the foreman stood up to announce the outcome, the young officer held her breath. Would justice be served? "We find the defendants guilty on all charges," the foreman declared. The courtroom erupted in a mix of gasps and cheers. The young officer felt tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. It was a victory not just for her, but for the entire community that had come together to fight against corruption. As the guilty officers were led away, she felt a sense of closure. They had been held accountable for their actions, and she hoped this would send a powerful message about the importance of integrity in law enforcement. It was a new beginning for her and the community, a chance to rebuild trust and restore faith in the system. That night, as the young officer reflected on everything that had happened, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. She realized that courage comes in many forms, and sometimes it's found in simply speaking the truth. With this chapter of her life closing, she looked forward to the future with hope, ready to continue her journey as a protector of her community. In the days following the trial, the young officer experienced a whirlwind of emotions. The verdict had brought a sense of relief and hope, but she also felt a heavy weight lift from her shoulders. The community had rallied behind her, and now they were beginning to rebuild the trust that had been lost. However, she knew that the road ahead would not be easy. As the community came together to celebrate the victory, the young officer took time to reflect on the journey that had led to this moment. She visited the places where she had grown up and spoke with local residents about their hopes for the future. People shared stories of their struggles with crime and their dreams for a safer neighborhood. It was heartwarming to see how her actions had inspired others to believe that change was possible. One evening, she attended a community meeting at the local community center. The room was filled with families, friends, and neighbors who had come together to discuss ways to improve their neighborhood. The atmosphere was positive, with everyone eager to contribute ideas. When it was her turn to speak, she shared her story again, explaining how important it was for everyone to come together to create a safe environment. "I believe that we all have a role to play in keeping our communities safe," she said passionately. "Each of us can make a difference, whether it's by looking out for one another or standing up against wrongdoing." Her words resonated with the audience, and many expressed their gratitude for her bravery. They began discussing ways to hold regular meetings, form neighborhood watch groups, and foster open communication with local police. Inspired by the enthusiasm in the room, she decided to take action. She partnered with community leaders and organized workshops focused on safety, crime prevention, and how to report suspicious activities. The turnout was impressive. Families and individuals from all walks of life attended. They listened attentively as she explained the importance of vigilance and collaboration. She wanted everyone to feel empowered and to know that their voices mattered. During one workshop, she shared her experiences as a police officer, emphasizing that not all officers were corrupt. She wanted the community to understand that there were good officers dedicated to protecting them. This openness helped to rebuild trust, and people began to see the police force in a new light. The young officer encouraged attendees to reach out to officers with concerns, reminding them that communication was key to a healthier relationship between the community and law enforcement. As weeks turned into months, the young officer continued her outreach efforts. She visited schools to talk to students about the importance of integrity in making good choices. The children listened with wide eyes as she shared stories of her own challenges and the importance of standing up for what is right. She encouraged them to be honest and kind, fostering a sense of community among the young people. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, and she began to see a shift in the attitudes of the youth in her community. While the work was rewarding, it was not without its challenges. The young officer faced criticism from some who believed that the changes were too slow or that the issues ran too deep to fix. There were moments when she felt discouraged, but she reminded herself of the progress that had already been made. The community was beginning to unite, and small victories were happening every day. One day, as she was leaving a community event, she was approached by an older man who had been a long-time resident of the neighborhood. He looked her in the eye and said, "You've given us hope. We've been waiting for someone to stand up for us, and now we believe things can change." His words touched her deeply, and she realized that her work was making a difference. As time went on, the community grew stronger. More people began to engage in local initiatives, and crime rates started to drop. Neighbors looked out for one another, and the bond between the police and the community deepened. The young officer felt a sense of pride, knowing that her actions had helped ignite a spark of change. Looking back, she realized that it wasn't just about catching the corrupt officers. It was about inspiring a movement for justice, integrity, and community involvement. With each passing day, she felt more committed than ever to her role as a protector and advocate for the people she served. She understood that change takes time, but with unity and determination, anything was possible. As the months rolled on, the young officer continued to work closely with her community, but she also faced a new challenge: maintaining the momentum of change. It was easy to feel hopeful when things were going well, but she knew that staying engaged was crucial. She wanted to ensure that the efforts they had started did not fade away. One day, she gathered her fellow officers to discuss ways to deepen their connection with the community. "We need to keep showing people that we're here for them," she said during the meeting. "We've made progress, but if we don't keep the dialogue open, we risk losing their trust again." The room nodded in agreement. Everyone was eager to contribute ideas on how to strengthen those bonds. Inspired by the conversations, the young officer proposed a series of community events. They decided to host family-friendly gatherings, such as barbecues, movie nights in the park, and sports tournaments. The goal was simple: bring people together and show them that the police were not just enforcers of the law, but also active members of the community who cared about their well-being. The first event was a neighborhood barbecue held on a sunny Saturday afternoon. The officer worked hard to plan everything, from gathering supplies to coordinating with local businesses for food donations. When the day arrived, she was excited to see families arriving with picnic blankets and smiles. As the smell of grilled burgers and hot dogs filled the air, laughter echoed through the park. Children played games while parents chatted, and the atmosphere was filled with joy. The young officer moved around, engaging with families and answering questions. She introduced her fellow officers, who were eager to meet the community. They all shared stories, created connections, and worked to break down any remaining barriers. As the sun began to set, the young officer took a moment to reflect on the scene around her. She watched as a group of kids played tag, and families enjoyed their meals together. This was the vision she had hoped for: a community that felt safe and connected. It was heartwarming to see the smiles on everyone's faces, and she realized how important these moments were for healing the wounds of the past. After the success of the barbecue, they organized more events in the coming months. Each gathering attracted more people, and the relationships between the police and community members grew stronger. The officer could see that the trust they were building was becoming a foundation for a healthier relationship. One evening, during a movie night in the park, a young girl approached the officer. With wide eyes and a shy smile, she asked, "Can you show us how to be police officers?" The young officer knelt down to meet her gaze and smiled back. "Absolutely. How about I teach you some things right now?" She gathered a small group of kids and began explaining the different roles of police officers and how they work to keep everyone safe. The children listened attentively, asking questions and sharing their thoughts. It was a beautiful moment of connection, and the young officer felt a surge of joy. Teaching them about her job allowed her to inspire the next generation, showing them that being a police officer was about service and integrity. As time passed, the young officer noticed a change in the community's attitude toward the police. People were more willing to approach officers with concerns, and she often heard compliments about their work. The unity they had built was evident, and she knew they were making a real difference. However, not everyone was convinced. A few community members remained skeptical, recalling the pain caused by the corrupt officers. The young officer understood their feelings and recognized that trust would take time to rebuild fully. She made it her mission to reach out to these individuals, inviting them to share their concerns in open forums. During one such meeting, she listened to their stories with empathy. She acknowledged the hurt and anger they felt and assured them that their voices mattered. "I understand that we have a long way to go," she said sincerely, "but I promised you, we are committed to doing better and making this community a safer place for everyone." Gradually, those who were once hesitant began to soften. They saw the young officer's genuine dedication and the positive changes happening around them. Slowly but surely, a sense of hope spread throughout the community. With each event and conversation, the officer felt more connected to the people she served. The transformation was not just in the community, but also within herself. She had grown from a young officer who once felt intimidated by the weight of her responsibilities into a confident leader dedicated to making a difference. As the year progressed, the young officer became more involved in community initiatives, but she also faced new challenges. Despite the positive changes, there were still lingering issues that needed attention. The officer knew that she had to keep pushing for improvements while ensuring that the relationships built over the months remained strong. One day, she received a call from a local school asking if she could speak at their annual safety assembly. Excited about the opportunity, she prepared a presentation that focused on the importance of safety and how students could help create a positive environment. The assembly day arrived, and she walked into the school gym filled with colorful decorations and eager faces. As she stood before the students, she could feel her heart race. She wanted to connect with them and inspire them to be proactive about their safety. "Hi everyone. I'm really happy to be here today. I want to talk to you about how you can help keep your school safe," she said with enthusiasm. The kids listened closely as she explained how important it was for them to report anything that made them feel uncomfortable or unsafe. She shared stories of teamwork and how police officers and community members could work together to create a safe place for everyone. The students responded with questions, and she encouraged them to think about what safety meant to them. "Remember, safety isn't just about the police. It's about all of us looking out for each other," she emphasized. After her talk, several students approached her, excited to share their ideas on improving safety in their school. One girl suggested a buddy system for walking home, while a boy proposed organizing safety drills. Their ideas made the young officer smile. It was clear that they were engaged and eager to contribute. "These are great suggestions. Let's work on implementing them," she replied, feeling energized by their enthusiasm. Over the next few weeks, she collaborated with the school staff to bring the students' ideas to life. They established the buddy system, and the students took charge of planning safety drills. The young officer attended these drills, guiding the students on what to do in emergencies. Watching them take charge filled her with pride, knowing she had played a part in fostering their confidence. Meanwhile, the community events continued, but the young officer noticed that not everyone was participating. Some individuals still harbored distrust towards the police due to past experiences. Determined to address this, she decided to host a series of informal coffee chats in various neighborhoods. The idea was simple: create a relaxed space where community members could come together with officers to share their thoughts and concerns. The first coffee chat was held in a local cafe, where people gathered to enjoy warm drinks and pastries. At first, the atmosphere was a bit tense, with some attendees appearing hesitant. The young officer welcomed everyone and encouraged open dialogue. "I want to hear from you. What are your concerns? What can we do better?" she asked sincerely. Gradually, the conversation opened up. Residents began sharing their experiences and frustrations. Some spoke about their fear of crime, while others expressed disappointment with how they had been treated by officers in the past. The young officer listened carefully, validating their feelings and acknowledging the need for change. "I hear you. Your concerns are important, and I want to make sure we address them together," she said. As the chats continued, more people began to attend. The young officer created an environment of trust, and many residents felt empowered to voice their opinions. They began discussing ideas for future community events and ways the police could support their efforts. It was a transformative experience for everyone involved. Through these coffee chats, the young officer learned valuable lessons about empathy and the importance of communication. She realized that building trust takes time and effort, but it was worth it. Each conversation brought her closer to understanding the community's needs and fostering a sense of partnership. One evening, during one of the chats, a woman spoke about her son's struggles with bullying at school. She expressed her fear that he would not feel safe and that the police wouldn't understand his situation. The young officer nodded, feeling the weight of the mother's worry. "Let's work together to address this. I can connect you with resources, and we can talk to the school about support systems," she suggested. By working collaboratively, they established a plan that included outreach programs in schools to address bullying. The young officer worked closely with educators and counselors, ensuring that children felt safe reporting incidents. This initiative not only helped the students but also strengthened the bond between the school and the police. As the seasons changed, the young officer continued to witness the positive impacts of her work within the community. However, she understood that maintaining the progress they had made required ongoing effort and dedication. Every day brought new opportunities and challenges, and she was determined to meet them head-on. One day, while at the community center, she received a call from a local youth group that wanted to collaborate on a project aimed at promoting safety and community pride. They proposed hosting a Safety Day event, where residents could learn about various safety topics, engage in fun activities, and connect with local police officers. Excited about the idea, the young officer quickly agreed and started brainstorming ways to make the event a success. In the following weeks, she met with the youth group to plan the event. Together, they organized workshops on topics like personal safety, emergency preparedness, and cyber safety. They also arranged games and activities to keep the younger kids engaged. The young officer felt thrilled to see the energy and enthusiasm from the youth group members. Their commitment to making a difference motivated her even more. As the day of the event approached, the excitement in the community grew. Flyers were distributed, and word of mouth spread quickly. The young officer couldn't wait to see the turnout and hoped that many families would come to enjoy the day together. On the morning of the event, she arrived early to help set up. The park was filled with colorful banners, tables loaded with safety materials, and a small stage for presentations. When the event kicked off, she was overwhelmed by the turnout. Families flocked to the park, and laughter filled the air as children ran to participate in the games. The young officer began her presentation, speaking about the importance of safety and how everyone could play a role in keeping the community safe. She encouraged questions and shared stories that resonated with both children and adults. As she moved from one workshop to another, she saw families engaging in discussions about safety, sharing tips, and exchanging ideas. There was a sense of camaraderie in the air, and the young officer felt proud of the way the community had come together. People who had once been hesitant to approach the police were now laughing and talking with officers as if they were old friends. During a break, a young boy approached her, holding a badge he had just received from one of the officers. "Look, I'm a junior officer now," he exclaimed, his eyes shining with excitement. The young officer knelt down to his level, grinning widely. "You sure are. Remember, being a junior officer means helping others and being brave. Keep it up." The boy nodded enthusiastically and ran off to share his badge with his friends. Watching him run away, the young officer realized that this event was about more than just safety. It was about inspiring the next generation. She wanted children to grow up knowing they could trust their local police and feel empowered to make a difference in their own communities. As the day continued, local businesses also stepped in to support the event by donating food and prizes for the games. The community spirit was infectious, and everyone seemed eager to contribute. The young officer took a moment to thank the business owners, expressing her gratitude for their support. It was clear that the community was rallying together, and she was proud to be a part of it. As the sun began to set, the young officer gathered everyone for the closing ceremony. She thanked everyone for coming and highlighted the importance of working together to keep the community safe. "We are stronger when we stand united," she declared, and the crowd erupted in cheers. The atmosphere was electric, filled with hope and a shared commitment to creating a better future. After the event, the young officer received positive feedback from many attendees. People expressed their appreciation for the knowledge they gained and how much they enjoyed the day. A few even approached her with ideas for future events. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that they were not just fostering safety, but also building a stronger community. As the months passed, the officer continued to engage with the community through various events and initiatives. She recognized that change was an ongoing process, but she was ready for the challenges ahead. Each interaction and conversation brought new understanding and strengthened the bond between the police and the community. The young officer had become a beacon of hope, not just for the community, but for herself as well. She realized that the journey she had started was not just about combating corruption. It was about healing, understanding, and empowering those around her.